I'm excited because today I'm going to be able to give you a lap around the universal Windows platform. What I've done is written a single application that runs across a plethora of devices that I'm going to show you today. Now, I decided to focus on a home remodeling application. I was inspired because my wife and I started a project in our home. And as we were working with a firm to go through this process, I kept thinking about how I could streamline and improve the experience that they had between the firm and with us, the customer, and really also with the device family that we have with Windows. There was a bunch of things they could do that would be unique and they could differentiate from their competitors. So let me just dive right in here and talk about this application. So it has 5 phases. It has a design phase, a planning phase, and a capturing phase, then an organizational phase, and then kind of this last phase, which is they present the final product. And they'll ultimately try and make and close that. So for this design phase, I think the best device I could think of was kind of a creative sketching device, which is a Surface Pro 3. So here I have that running. And you can see on the left-hand side, I have a split view UI here at the top. I have the 5 phases that I talked about. On the right-hand side is a canvas for me to draw on. So I'll just start drawing, and you'll notice the beautiful ink support that we have with the universal platform. And I can go draw my room here, and you know, I'm actually not very good at sketching, but it all is beautiful with this ink, low latency, and you can see it's very fluid. This is all built on the new direct ink APIs that we support on the universal platform, and this is all hosted inside of an ink canvas. But I wouldn't be the one who really was doing the initial design. Instead, I would have gotten that from a designer. So we can also save and load ink. And when it loads the ink, this is real ink. This is not some image that can't be modified because we want to collaborate on it. So here I'm going to move my pen into selection mode, and I'm going to draw a lasso around that. And then I'm going to use my finger. This app is aware and knows that when I'm using my finger, I'm in editing, I'm not drawing. Because I can also draw with my finger, but here I'm going to differentiate between pen and touch. And then I can go and say, you know what, I really want my entryway to be a little bit bigger. And so I can add my creative, whatever creative I have to this application for us. So let me go show you the code that we wrote to create that lasso. So I'm going to hop on over here to Visual Studio. And what you'll see here is this is my XAML for my design pane. And so all I had to do was add this ink canvas control that's new in the universal platform. So once I have this in here, then I can wire up some code to create that lasso. So let's go look at how to write that code. There are really 3 parts that I have, 3 event handlers that I need to do. My first press when I want the selection, then as I move the pen, I get another set of events, and then when I release it, I need to go perform the operation. So let's start with the code for creating the lasso on my press. So when I press, I'm going to create a polyline. This is the line that I'm drawing for the lasso. I go set some attributes on the line itself. I have to make sure I add the first point. And then I go and I say, for the canvas, I want this to be a selection versus the actual part of the canvas drawing. The ink canvas is smart enough to know the difference between selection and drawing on the canvas itself. Then I'm going to go here to where when I move it, and all I do is add another point every time I move. And that's nice and simple. And then when I release it, I need to process it. And so, of course, never forget to add the last point so it looks right. And then create a bounding rec. Here, what I do is I get the polyline that I drew around it, and I ask the ink canvas to give me all the points that are within that polyline. And that creates this bounding rec. And then I draw right around that, I draw that bounding rec, and that's all I had to go do. So very straightforward, simple, a little bit of code here, and I have great selection and a great experience on this device. Now, this is not the only device that supports pen. And we know that universal applications run across many devices, and anyone that supports pen will support it. So here, we have the largest of our pen-enabled devices. This is an 84-inch 4K Surface Hub. So let me go load the same application. And so this literally is the same binary running here on the Surface Hub. And I can go and I can draw beautiful fluid ink. Build. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, well. Made an error there. Can't spell. But I can load the same exact thing here. It's all very fluid, beautiful ink, all with the same application. But this is not just for drawing. It really is a phenomenal collaboration device. And having this in the showroom would be a great place to interact with their customers and to kind of not just draw the sketch, but also begin to plan the trip. Because the next phase is going in and out, going to different stores and looking at different materials and carpeting and flooring and countertops and deciding what you want to do. So here in this phase, we're looking at a map. And this is a built-in map control. If you remember from yesterday, Joe showed you our map app. And our map app is using the same exact map control that is available to every developer using the universal platform. Now, this is a very rich control. I can go move it around. I can stretch it. I can actually do a tilt view. All this works offline. I also have a 3D aerial view built in. All you have to do is change the mode and say you want an aerial view. But I'm going to move back here. So map's not very useful if you can't put anything on the map. So we also have the ability to pin points of interest, or in this case, stores. So I've set up a little filter here where I can go choose what type of stores I want. So they have a list that they work with and partner with. And I typically like more modern stores. My wife likes traditional. But since she's not here, I win this time. We're going to go look at modern stores. Your mileage may vary. And you'll see that I also have a list here because I want to actually see what they are. And then the points of interest just show up on the map. All I had to do was data bind that list to both of these, and they show up. So now I'm going to hop on over here and show you the code that I wrote to create those points on the map. So here I am back in my Visual Studio, and I'm going to go to my planned trip XAML right here. So all I had to do was add a map control, set some basic zoom levels on it, and then create a list box, data binding the stores that I was going to have here in this list box. And then that's all I need to do in my XAML. Then every single time I do the drop down and I choose and I optimize on which ones I want, whether I select all of them, I get a event handler here on my click. And let me just pop in the code here. So I do some simple processing right here. I go through. This is pretty simple. Just go see which things are checkboxed, create some queries, for which of the stores we wanted. And then I just go and I update my observable collection that's data bound. And then I update that. And it automatically will go show the points of interest and the list. Very straightforward, easy to add, easy to optimize. But now once I've gone and I sort of planned my trip, I want to go take photos and see the different furniture and carpets and use nice optimized fashion. You just kind of walk around and go. And it's kind of heavy to go lug one of these big things around. So let's go from our largest device to our smallest device, which is our phone. And it's the most portable, so I can bring it with me. So here, I'm going to launch the same exact application. And what you'll notice is it has automatically adapted its user experience to run on the smaller form factor and look appropriate on this device. And basically the map is now at the top and the list at the bottom. The menu is now in overlay mode. All of that very straightforward. So let's go see here, go into capture. And you'll see here we have a new camera API that allows you to go into a preview mode and take a picture. And this conveniently located end table over here is a perfect one that I think I'll put, maybe in my living room. So I'll just go, I'll take a picture of that. And I'm able to go say, hey, tell my wife, I think this would be great for our, maybe our bedroom or a living room or something like that. So now let me go show you the code that we wrote to build that adaptive user experience that we've been talking so much about at this conference. So I'm going to pop back here to the XAML I have in that planning page. So what I didn't show you above this is right here, right above the map and the list, they were inside of a relative panel. Relative panel is a new layout container that we've created that really provides a lot of the magic behind the adaptive user experience. It allows you as developers to either dock items, items inside of it to each other or to the side, to the top, bottom, and give you a lot of flexibility in setting attributes. Above this, I've set up a few visual state groups with adaptive triggers that David talked about. And so I have two states. One, when it's between 0 and 599 pixels, and then when it's 600 pixels and above. So my narrow state is that smaller one. And so basically my adaptive trigger says, hey, when it's 0, then it will go basically less than the other one. It will go and do a bunch of setters. And what these setters do is it makes the map go above and the list below and then take the full width of the screen. When it's 600 pixels, this adaptive trigger will fire and apply these setters. And these setters do what you see on the screen over here, the map on the left-hand side and the list on the right-hand side, and then they take up the full height. So here you can set up a bunch of adaptive triggers based on the size or any other attributes and adapt the user experience very straightforwardly. This is what provides all the magic. Relative panel plus adaptive triggers plus the Visual State Manager. And that gives you all that richness that you've seen in all these different user experiences over the last few days. So now that we've taken the photos and we have a bunch of those that we've collected, it's really about arranging those photos and deciding you want to create storyboards for different rooms. Now, when I think about going and creating a storyboard and kind of manipulating lots of different pictures and photos, I think a desktop is a much better device for doing that. Use a mouse, my keyboard maybe to type things. So I'm going to move over to my desktop and show you the same exact application running here. And what you'll notice in this organized phase, first of all, is we're using a pivot. This is, as David said, we've added pivot now to the desktop. This is a great user control for being able to view like the rooms and then be able to assign different things to different rooms. So I can pivot between each of the rooms, and I start to create storyboards for each of these. And they work very nicely with touch as well. And then I think the right way to do this is really to use a drag and drop metaphor, where I'll go to my living room and I'll say, you know what, I don't really like this. I'm going to remove that. So I use right click. That works natural. Then I'll just drag in another one and say, I want this instead. And so here are the floors that I think would be great for it. I'll go to my master bedroom and say, I think fireplace. Everybody think I should have a fireplace in my master bedroom? I think it'd be great to have a fireplace in my master bedroom. So I've dragged that in there as well. And so now I have be able to basically add a few things here. But on the desktop, it's not just about the single application. It's about using multiple applications and really multiple windows, like David said. So I'm also able to support drag and drop between applications. So here we have the photo application that's built in, but you could also use the File Explorer. So if you had something on an SD card, or if you had a WPF or Windows or Win32 application, all of those would work as well. So we can now drag in, and this will go take this bitmap that I had, or this JPEG I think it is, and it'll go and import it in here and add it to the film strip at the bottom that allows me to do some of the palette that I'm choosing from for my rooms. So now I'm going to go back to Visual Studio and show you how I implemented all of that drag and drop functionality. So I'm going to move over to my organized page, and there's the code behind that I've got. So I have a handler called grid drop. So whenever I drop it onto that grid, this fires. It's the same exact function that fires whether or not I dragged it from inside the app or from outside from a different application. But I get different content. When I dragged it from outside the application, I got a bitmap, or I got a JPEG or some sort of image format. Where when I dragged it from inside, I had already a furniture that I had defined in my collection there. So I detect those in two different ways. So when it comes in here, it's one of the if it's a storage item, then I'm going to know it came from outside. So let me drop in the code here and show you how I add it to the list of furnitures. So I go and I find out, are there any items? And then I go and I get the bitmap, I import it, so whatever format, we have a bunch of decoders built into the platform, and they will automatically decode it. Then I have 3 different attributes on every furniture item, which is a name, a description, and then I have this ID that I have, and it gives it a unique identifier for every piece of furniture. And I actually use that later on, so I don't have more than one copy, because nobody wants more than one copy of everything. And then I set the image, and then all I do is add it to the list of captured images. If I actually am dragging it from within the application, I have some code here I've written. Here, the way I do that is I reference just the unique identifier of the furniture, and then I want to assign it to a specific room in the pivot. So I get that ID, what was passed in during the drop operation. Then I go, ask which of the pivot tabs, and those are the 3 rooms that I was having remodeled, it was in, and I just add it to the list of captured images for that room. So very straightforward. I was able to use drag and drop between applications or within my applications as a great way to build an experience that felt natural for someone using a mouse. So now once we kind of get through this phase of, we've kind of created storyboards for each room, what we also like to do is kind of do a slideshow. How do I get a feeling for what that room's going to feel like and the characteristics of that room? So here I'm going to go back and get this side. We have a slideshow mode where if I hit this, it will cycle through all the photos, all the captured images for that room. So I can get a feel for the aesthetic and say, yeah, do they all match or do they not match? Now, while this is great to do for my room, I think it's great also for this customer. I was thinking, wow, if they could build some kiosks and have some of these pre-done, some area there, their showroom that says, okay, here's the kitchens, over here, here's the living rooms, or here's a different type of aesthetic like traditional. They can have these dedicated kiosks that would kind of advertise, some of the ways that their aesthetics works and attract more of their customers and excite them and give them maybe some ideas. And I think the best way to do that is with some dedicated devices. So I suggested we use a Raspberry Pi 2 with Windows IoT Core running on it, because I can run the exact same application. What you see here is a Raspberry Pi, and I have a proximity sensor hooked up to it, so you can tell if someone walks over to the room. I can give them a custom experience of how they do that. So let me show you it here running, because I have one running here. So when I walk in front of it, you'll see that it'll detect me, I'm here, and it'll start the slideshow. And it'll start rotating through several of the images. And then as I move closer, it'll say, well, I know they're closer, so I'll get denser. And even closer, it'll get more dense. When I move away, good, I'm glad it worked. Those things are, it's always nice when they do. And it'll just turn off when I'm not in front of it anymore. So that'd be great. And the nice thing about it is, since it's a universal Windows platform, it runs on those devices as well. So let me hop over and show you the code that I wrote to talk to that sensor. So let me move over to my sensor code here. And so that's a little bit special code there that in the past, if you were running on anything other than Windows 10, you would have had to go write a driver, and you would have to talk to this special bus and add a bunch of support. It was a fairly complex amount of code. But with Windows 10, we now directly support talking to these various different buses. And so here, I'm talking to an I2C bus. And so what I need to do is, in my function here, first thing I need to do is enumerate the devices that are on the bus. Then I will establish a connection, and a lot of this information comes from the device. Got to read the manual. You can try and guess the parameters here, but typically read the manual and get the SDK for it. And then set up a timer that will go and sample that periodically. Now, once I have all those samples, then I can go hook up, how close I was and how fast it changed. And then I can create that behavior. Very straightforward, easy code now that we have support for all these buses in the Windows, Universal Windows platform. Now, once we've kind of set up all these things in the showroom, the most important thing is the presentation. They'll go off, they'll finalize it, they'll do some sketches, and they'll come back with a design. And they got to close the deal. They want the best presentation that they can possibly set up. So we think really the best way to present that is on a large screen TV, because we all watch our home remodeling shows, don't we, right? Everybody watch those? And they're always on our TV. So that's kind of the best way to go present it. So here, I've chosen to show this on an Xbox One running on the TV here that you can show on a TV. And so I'm going to run the application. And again, because it's part of the Universal Windows family, it can run any app that was built to the Universal Windows platform. And so I'm going to go into presentation mode here. And here we've got a sketch of a 3D model. That's the room, and so you can go present that, and they can look around and see the different rooms and whether they like them or not. And sure, it's a little void right now because I'm really not very good at designing. But nice, great experience. But I was thinking, if you want to be the best one out there, you want the best experience for your customers, there's another device in the Windows family that will provide even better experience. Can you join me in welcoming Felicia from the HoloLens team out here to show you this same exact app running on the HoloLens? And so what you'll see here is the same app that we wrote runs on the HoloLens, because Windows Holographic is Windows 10. And so here we have the same exact model, and she's able to look at it, walk around it, look at the flooring, see it looks a lot nicer than it did on the Xbox, and kind of just look around this and get just a great experience using the same exact application. Now, of course, we probably would go on and build a more customized experience, something that she could be immersed in and walk through it, and that would be all great. But I want to show this exact same app running to show you that a very simple app can be moved over to the HoloLens just as easy as any app can move among any of the device family. Thank you, Felicia. I appreciate it. So what I want to show you is the actual code that we wrote to make that work on the HoloLens versus what we had on the Xbox. So before I jump into that, I want to explain a little bit about how the camera works. In HoloLens, the camera moves all the time. Whenever the person's head moves or tilts or they move around, you must keep up the camera or the object will not look correct. In the past, the camera has been controlled by the developer or the programmer in most cases, but here it's controlled by the end user. And so it's also a stereoscopic camera. You have left and right eye, whereas on the Xbox, it's a flat 2D. So the camera on the Xbox, the 3D model is the same. It's the same exact 3D model, but the camera was a fixed 2D camera that would take it, create an image from the three-dimensional object, and then show that on the screen. On here, we're going to have to keep updating it with the left and right eye and update the parameters. So simply on each update, so this update gets called whenever she moved or looked around or tilted, and I need to go update the left and the right eye, so I'll read those from the HoloLens and I'll update those parameters in my rendering loop, and then I need to go update the rendering resources and the shaders based on those new camera positions. So this goes and now creates an interactive experience where she can walk around and see and interact with that model. So fairly straightforward for a very simple application. Obviously, for some of the more advanced stuff we saw yesterday, a little bit more of investment in code, but then you get a lot more benefit for the customer. So I've kind of gone through a lot of devices and shown you the same exact app running on all of them. But the goal really being that it was centered around the user. They were able to use that app with the right device that made sense for the task and the part of the operation that they were doing. And they can provide, this company can provide a great experience for their customers and really could differentiate versus the competition. Thanks, back to you, Dave.